let's be honest about how people felt about George Lucas's own prequels. Right? When those started to come out and people were like, these are not it. It started to take away from what he had done. So I'm just going to hit pause. I'm going to go in the time machine. What if instead of making Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, George Lucas's prequels had been Andor and Rogue One? Now what would you be saying about George Lucas? Exactly. And that's what I mean. Tony Gilroy found a way in to enhance arguably the greatest cinematic trilogy of all time.
This is a very good conversation.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. Brian, I don't got to put up the meme anymore, man. Paul Revere a long time ago.
I understood that reference.
And it's done. It's happened. So she's gone, and the people, Brian, that we have talked about possibly taking over, one of them was Jon Favreau. I think he just doesn't want to deal with the whole situation, and he just wants to do his own thing, and that's cool. And then Dave Filoni. What has happened? Has anything changed as far as what we discussed?
Well, the change is that it's official. So Kathleen Kennedy has officially stepped down as head of Lucasfilm. And as previously reported, Dave Filoni will handle the creative side, while Lynwen Brennan, who's been at the company for 15 years on the business side, will officially become kind of the business head of Lucasfilm going forward. So we'll get a little bit more into maybe some pros and cons of that setup, which seems to copycat a little bit of the James Gunn, Peter Safran DC approach of splitting business and creative in terms of running an IP. But Kathleen Kennedy sat for an exit interview at Deadline. And it's really long. I highly recommend you read it. There's a lot of cinema history in there that we won't talk about here, but I mean, this is someone who has been around some of the biggest projects of all time for 45 years. So it is worth a while read. But of course, the stuff that we want to talk about and that everyone honed in on is what she said about Star Wars. And she's already stirring the pot on the way out in a lot of segments, to the point where we'll get into it. Rian Johnson has already clapped back at her for something she said.
And just now, to let everyone know, I saw the headline, and I'm pretty much wait to see what Brian read. So you're gonna get it's. I'm reacting to what she said at this very moment. I haven't read the article, but I saw the headline, so I know what's going on in a sense. And as far as Filoni, there are some things that came out as well that we have to discuss as well. So go ahead.
Yeah. And a lot of the most interesting stuff is she gives an update on every Star Wars project currently in development, and there's some eye-opening stuff in there. And obviously, she won't necessarily be the arbiter of what happens next, but I would say what she laid out is certainly different than what's been in the press in a number of spots. So first off, she talks about kind of Star Wars as a whole. And she talks about kind of the pros and cons of being involved with it. And then she kind of throws shade at the studio a little bit on the way out. So it's kind of stuck in the middle of the comments, but I'll get to what she kind of buried in some of the responses. And I think you're going to see more people respond to this. So I'll just quickly give you, Deadline asked her, what are the highs and lows of running a company built on beloved IP? And she said, kind of the boilerplate. The highs include realizing, quote, how many people love Star Wars. The majority of people, and certainly the people I run into, people outside the business, they love Star Wars, they love the movies, they love the shows. Well, they might love some of the shows. But when I came into this, I realized a few things. We had walked in at a moment where there hadn't been movies for 10 years, but there was still this memory of the greatest series of movies in cinema history. So that you're walking into something that has enormous expectations, yet at the same time, you know that you've got to find new characters. You have to expand the galaxy. You need to think about who the new audience is. And that's what I feel I did. And that's what I feel all the people I've worked with over this last decade did. End quote. That, I don't think we disagree with, philosophically.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, she's saying almost impossible expectations because of what George Lucas started. But the burden on someone in her role is in some ways to not simply recycle, that you have to keep trying to find new ways to make it relevant. I don't think we disagree with that.
But here lies the issue: is the creative choices.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
what it is. It's just the creative choices in the directions you chose to go.
Correct. 100%. So this is your mission statement is valid. And actually, I think we would applaud it. Your execution and the choices that came after started to show that maybe you didn't have the best handle on what would achieve what you just said, which is what kinds of characters could resonate with a broader audience, what kinds of shows, what kinds of themes, what kinds of evolutions would be widely accepted and embraced. So there's that part I think is more dubious. Now, Deadline follows up because she didn't answer it. The lows? ? And she goes, the lows are that you've got a very, very small percentage of the fan base that has enormous expectations and basically wants to continue to see the same thing, end quote.
She pretty much gave you the cliff note as to what we've been talking about.
I'm not sure there's anything you can do about that because you can't please everybody. All you can try to do is tell good stories and stick to the essence of what George created because he embedded incredible values into Star Wars and what it has to say. Then here's the thing that I think some people will start to feel a certain way about. I wouldn't do that any differently. I wouldn't change anything we've done over the years. I understand why some people may like certain things more than others, but that's not going to change why I decided to do certain things, why I decided to work with the people that we work with. Because I think everybody that came into Star Wars space loves Star Wars, and that was first and foremost most important. You have to have people coming into Star Wars and wanting to tell stories and wanting to make movies and create television shows that you respect and care about. Jon Favreau is completely different than Tony Gilroy. They're both incredibly talented storytellers. I found it thrilling to support each of them in trying to tell stories they wanted to tell, end quote. No regrets, Pablo. Zero.
It's hard to have regret when the choices you've made have been made, and the results are it is what it is. You can't change it. It's not a matter of would you.
Yeah.
At this point, you've done what you've done, and the response is what the response was, and it wasn't comfortable. It was, very love-hate type of situation. Because Andor, obviously, we loved. We love. Rogue One, the original 3, the last, the third of the prequels, and there's those that are like, what is this? Like, what is this, yo? What is this?
There's a lensing what she said there is really important because if we're being, we've had some fun at her expense in the last few years, but if you were to evaluate her as a producer, strictly from the standpoint that most studios are going to, she has ground to stand on, right?
Sure.
I mean, the list of $1 billion plus projects. I mean, she still is the lead producer on Force Awakens, which has made more money in the U.S. than any movie in history, right? Like these are things that are sort of unassailable on the one hand. Where it gets tricky from the fandom side is obviously kind of the chaos of the last, I would say, almost 10 years in particular, from Last Jedi onward. Yeah. Where that has felt like there really isn't much of a plan, and the experimentations and the new things they've tried have almost seemed doomed from the start in many cases, with the exception of Andor and the launch of Mandalorian. I think those are really the two things that sort of most people gravitated toward. But everything else has felt like...
There have been moments.
Well, I mean, like even the promise of something like The Acolyte, when you see the sizzle reel with the kung fu and that sort of stuff, and then you see what the show actually is, and you're like, oh, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that, right?
Yeah, like what is this?
Yeah, and then or even like the adaptation of Ahsoka, where those are exciting characters, and there's moments where you're like, this could be something really cinematic, and then you see it, how uneven it is, how sloppy it is at points, and you're just sort of like, well, maybe that wasn't a great idea to translate something from, Clone Wars animation to live action TV. So the hit rate has definitely not been where you need it to be for something like this in the last 8 to 9 years. But, as she said, if she's sitting there saying like over the course of her 40 some odd years, and you can throw Indiana Jones into this and some of the other things that she's produced, there's so many successes on there. It is hard to sort of say like, well, Kathleen Kennedy's going in the Hall of Fame, right? That's not really the question.
Yeah.
It's the last decade of what this has done to the
it's
IP.
the bad stuff.
And then where can we go from here because of that? So here's one that she said that I thought she starts name dropping. And this will get to the projects that are in process. But she starts talking about people that apparently she spoke with about doing Star Wars that never happened. So she starts with Tony Gilroy. She said, I knew him well from the Bourne Identity movies. He did not see himself in Star Wars. I said, okay, let's just talk this through. And he came in on Rogue One. He helped us. And then he slowly started to get hooked. By the time we were talking about Andor, he found a way in because he realized something important he had to say, and he could do it inside Star Wars. And that started to become very exciting for him. It's thrilling to try and find that. I've had conversations with David Fincher. Wow. With Vince Gilligan, Breaking Bad for TV. I've sat down with Alex Garland and others where the minute you hear their name, you go, oh, that might be an interesting Star Wars. Yeah, she's right about that. But not everybody is going to go, oh yeah, great. I'm going to drop everything in my life and spend the next 3 to 5 years trying to figure this out. That is the other thing to consider. These are really complicated, difficult movies to make, far more than I think people give them credit for. And people have to set aside their lives for years. Then they asked how long. She had 3 to 5. From the time you start developing, then what's involved in concept work and creation. So she's kind of saying a lot of these people had an idea, had a pitch, she pitched them, but they just like, I'm not living in Star Wars for that long. And that's why the talks ended.
No, I just wanted to plug in quickly, and I don't want to go on a tangent, so hold that thought, please. But I just want to quickly insert, AI, man, has the capability of 3 to 5 years. AI has the capability of getting you to a place where you can create quickly. And so the abundance of content that people are trying to create at right now, it's about to go crazy. When you listen to Instagram having its own TV thing now, content is king. It hasn't changed. Go ahead.
Wow. It's funny that Pablo mentions this because
Deadline and we haven't rehearsed.
Deadline. Now, this is really fun. I thought this part was hilarious unintentionally. Deadline. So Bob Iger retired, was replaced, and then came back, ... Kathleen Kennedy. That's not happening here.
Yeah.
I told everybody I would stick around a bit longer than I had intended. And then ... She ends with, I'm also really interested in new technology, I have to say. Deadline. AI? ? Kathleen Kennedy. Yes. I am interested in exploring using these tools in responsible ways, working around complications, trying to figure out what we're going to do to protect artists' rights. But at the same time, there is nothing more exciting than having new tools that can expand on what you're capable of doing in creating the visual language around stories.
Thank you.
Follow-up. Is there some past breakthrough that compares to the game-changing story element AI could bring forward? Her response. It is somewhat comparable to when we did Jurassic Park because it was collision. See, another movie she produced. Because it was a collision, or was one of the producers for it, because it was a collision of innovation that George was already doing, meaning at ILM, in terms of sound, picture, and editing, all the areas of digital innovation that he really spearheaded. But then when we had the opportunity to do the first CG shot ever in a movie, there was a stained glass window, the figure in the stained glass window, and a lot of people don't remember that this was in fact the first CGI shot. So she's kind of saying like you're at this crossroads of this. But it's funny you bring up AI because she's implying that her next stop in producing is sort of going to be on the AI front, or she's going to be working on something on the AI front because she's still at Disney. Don't forget, like she's can produce and she's still at Disney. She's just not running Lucasfilm. So there's your AI tease of something Kathleen Kennedy might be involved in, which led to the like AI Kennedy might be back in the future. She might be back, just in a different form.
Yeah.
All right, ready for the Star Wars project rundown. I'm just gonna start with the actual worst news, and we're gonna lose our minds right now. So they asked her for progress on everything. Quote, it's a two-part answer. I got to tread a bit carefully here. Jim Mangold and Bo Willimon wrote an incredible script. It's definitely breaking the mold. And it's on hold. Last Jedi.
You know why?
Toast.
Do you know why? Because everybody who has their hands at creating something in Star Wars understands this, that if a movie like that is ever made, they have to adhere to the law of those commandments in the Genesis of the Jedi, and they don't want to commit to that. There you go. Continue.
She comes back to it. But I mean, come on, man. Last Jedi, back, not happening, or basically not anytime soon. These people. Next one. Taika Waititi has turned in a script. I think it's hilarious and great. Just not my decision, especially when I've got a foot out the door. Donald Glover has turned in a script. That presumably would be for Lando from way back when. And as you have read, Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver turned in a script. It was just great. Anything's a possibility if somebody is willing to take the risk. We talk about passing the buck, right? She's basically saying, I would make all these movies and all these projects, and it's Iger's fault or Bergman's fault. That's what she's saying. Because then she says, she follows it up, and she's like, I remember when I came into this job, the first thing Bob Iger said to me was, be bold. Mm-hmm. Everything I just reeled off to you is taking a bit of a chance, because none of these filmmakers are just walking in and trying to do same old, same old. And I'm excited by that, but the studio is nervous about that, and that's where it sits at the moment, end quote. She's just putting a blame pie right in Bob Iger's face.
He is the head man in charge. He's greenlighting stuff too. I'm pretty happy he has a say, and he's the boss of bosses in that organization, right?
There's no way Kathleen Kennedy would have said this if she was staying in the seat, though. This is clearly a quote of like, I'm on my way out.
It's
like, it wasn't me. She's like, wasn't me.
she's out just like that, yo. So that's how she's leaving the whole thing.
But so let's take this with a grain of salt because of her situation, but let's also take it at face value because we are seeing Disney do this elsewhere, right? The obsession with sequels, live action adaptations of animated films that they've already done, right? There clearly is a sameness to a lot of what Disney's doing. We know this. We look at Marvel is trying to play nostalgic notes all over the place for Doomsday, right? She's not saying something that feels out of line with what we're seeing from the studio, but that's not going to get it done. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if the studio is going to cater to that piece of the fan base that just wants the same old, I don't know, man. Like, I on the one hand, it's hard to look at what Kathleen Kennedy has gotten authorized or greenlit over the last few years and be like, that's the way to go. But at the same time, like, remaking New Hope again is not the answer either.
Yeah, that's definitely not the answer. Like, how do you avoid those moments of excellence in those films and try to redo them, yo? It's been done already. For those, hey, we still gotta, listen, we have to sort of move on from making these individuals the ones like Neo. They can't be Neo, and you know what I'm saying? They can't be this Ethan Hunt. They can't be just this one person, yo. We have to find new people, new stories. Because the saga continues regardless. The Republic is down. Look what they had to deal with after the Republic, the Empire went down.
Yeah.
You have to continue those stories, yo, because the balance of power only shifts, but at some point it comes back to center, and there's that, you know what I'm saying, that struggle again.
When you take that comment that she made about the studio just wants to not take chances, she then follows up on another project, and I think, without saying it, I think she lends credence to the rumors that are out there, because they ask her about the Simon Kinberg trilogy. And she says on that one, quote, he's working right now.
So the Simon Kinberg trilogy involved what specifically?
The rumor is that it's Skywalker 10, 11, and 12.
Skywalker 10, 11, and 12. Not Rey Skywalker, Luke Skywalker.
Who knows? It's a continuation of the storyline from Rise of Skywalker and from the original trilogy. It's like the same arc.
Okay.
I don't know if it's Rey or not.
Got it.
But
Okay.
and I think her comments here lead you to believe that whatever it is a Skywalker trilogy. Maybe it's a prequel, maybe it's in between, but like it is the same old, because she says Simon Kinberg's working right now. He wrote something that we read in August. It was very good, but not there. We've upended the story, spent a great deal of time on the treatment, which he literally finished 4 weeks ago. It's a very detailed treatment, like 70 pages. So he expected to give us something in March. But then she says, I know that Dave, meaning Filoni, and Lynwen, meaning Brennan, are very much on board with what Simon's doing. And that would be a new trilogy that in the timeline of things would take you well into 2030 plus. So that's really what's up next. So if you take what she's saying where the studio doesn't want to take risks, and then she's saying the Kinberg trilogy is the thing that everyone is greenlit and is on board and excited about, it leads you to believe that probably is a Skywalker something that doesn't take risks, which I'm already kind of dubious of. Because then she says, and then I got one after this, which is not mentioned. She goes, quote, so we talked about this new trilogy and all the things you've mentioned. Mangold, meaning Dawn of the Jedi, is really on the back burner, as is Soderbergh. I think the ones by Taika and Donald, are still somewhat alive, and that's going to be really up to the new team to figure out. So she's telling you Dawn of the Jedi is dead, Hunt for Kylo Ren dead, Taika Waititi's Star Wars maybe, Lando shockingly maybe. And you know what she doesn't even bring up in any capacity as existing? Rogue Squadron and the Rey movie. Just gone. As we told you. Even though Kathleen Kennedy is the one who brought Daisy Ridley on stage at what was supposed to be her exit send-off, those movies are dead, and dead.
Shout outs to Blade, because that's the same situation. You brought people on stage thinking that we were going to do something with it, and it's been delay after delay after delay after delay. Money spent.
I could have told you. What we told you from the time, like Rogue Squadron, I still say as an idea could have worked. Rey movie, told you from the second it got announced, DOA.
No.
And now it seems like they don't even have a script. They don't have anything. No mention of it. So it sounds like all you're getting is the Kinberg trilogy. That's where all the focus is. And then I guess we'll see what Filoni wants to add creatively beyond that. But that really seems like, based upon what she knows, that seems to be what the state of Star Wars is. And then she was asked, by the way, about like sequel possibilities for Starfighter and for Mando Grogu. She kind of says like those were both imagined as like standalone movies, like individual movies, not part one of something.
Yeah. All we know now is that things will change. For sure. Right? We no longer have that thought of, because there's been countless of shows and individuals who have just blamed her for a lot of the horribleness that we've gotten, right? But, she's the one that says go. So it's like hard to avoid the emotions and the reactions that people have towards. It's like, who you going to blame if you get a bad meal in a restaurant? You're going to blame the chef.
Yeah.
Because they're the one cooking. So now we get to see how different this is going to taste with this new chef or chefs.
Yeah. Well, she also talks about the toxicity around Last Jedi. And she made a comment that got Rian Johnson's attention. I don't think they'll be exchanging Christmas cards. So she said about Rian Johnson, well, once he made the Netflix deal and went off and started doing Knives Out films, that occupied a huge amount of his time. That's the other thing that happens here. After Sean Levy and I started talking Star Wars, Stranger Things kicks in and he was consumed by that for a while. That's what happened with Rian. I do believe he got spooked by the online negativity. I think Rian made one of the best Star Wars movies. He's a brilliant filmmaker, and he got spooked. This is the rough part. When people come into this space, I have every filmmaker and actor say to me, what's going to happen? They're a little scared, end quote. To which Rian Johnson went on social to say, 0 spooked. Sorry, LOL.
He perhaps just didn't want to deal with it, yo. It's not. I just don't want to deal with this.
That's a gentlemanly way of saying GTFOH. Is what that is.
Yeah, he just didn't want to deal with it, yo. I don't want to deal with this, yo. I want to make my movies. I have ideas, and I'm just gonna be doing what other people say on stuff I disagree with. I'm not doing what I enjoy doing, and I don't want to deal with this. I'm out. Nothing to do with being spooked.
All right, so that's the Kennedy. I say there'll be a lot of responses to that. That's the Kennedy commentary on the way out. So now, I guess the last part of our show is, we started down this path, but now that it's official, you heard what she said. We've seen a good bit of what Dave Filoni has had to do. And she claims, now who knows how real this is? She claims that she wanted Filoni and Brennan as the successors over 2 years ago when she started the process of negotiating and discussing this exit off-ramp. And so she said one of the tasks was to familiarize Filoni more with the side of movie making, right? That he was an animated guy, a storytelling guy, but he knew nothing about making films. And so she's like, we would have him basically be on set or be a part of the process for some of the movies so he could learn and absorb. I mean, how are you actually feeling, right? So all kidding aside, right? Kathleen Kennedy out, Filoni and Brennan in. Are you up arrow on Star Wars now? Are you down arrow? Are you sideways? What's your sort of temperature on the next direction of this? Because this
sideways.
Is a good segue to that other thing that has been percolating around. I want to let you to talk about that.
Yeah. It's sideways, Brian. Because I've already, again, we've seen what he's done. There has been moments of interesting things that's been done visually, and not all of it has been good. But there have been certain moments that could or would have had your interest, had your attention. But then it slowly dissipates because of the decisions that they decide to go with. And again, visually, he hasn't been impressive. Visually, he's made it look like some sort of Nickelodeon type of show with mad people with lightsabers. It just doesn't look appealing. I'm interested in seeing if he's heard that same critique. I'm interested in if he's heard that same critique, and has he made a decision to sort of not use certain tools and try to make this an immersive escape into that world. And I don't think he's done that. I think so hopefully there is, I'm interested in seeing what he does after this, because now I don't have to ask nobody. I'm going to do what I got to do. Mm-hmm. What I think is dope, right? What I think the fans think is dope. I'm in the seat right now, because that's what it is. Okay.
Don't lose sight. Lynwen Brennan. So don't lose sight of that, because obviously Kathleen Kennedy, as a female producer, one of the most powerful people in Hollywood, I think the idea of having the role split and still having another woman in that position or co-position probably was important. And getting someone who had been there for 16 years.
Okay, yeah.
Probably was something that Kathleen Kennedy was going to ride for, pretty big time.
Certainly.
Yeah. So you want to give the rumor thing about, because this is more than rumor. This was in the wrap. This was actually in a published story, also about Kathleen Kennedy's legacy. They dropped the nugget of information about Dave Filoni, which has got people talking. What do they say?
So, Brian, and let me just start from where I last left off in that he's in charge of the creative aspect of this, correct? So what
You
you
are correct.
see is him giving the green light to whatever it is that you see. So he's on the hot seat for sure. And so the hope is that he's heard the critiques, he's heard the concerns, and he's adjusting to making this what he hopes to be the success it was when it originally came out, and the success that it had for those moments where it was successful. Because when Star Wars is great, you just can't stop talking about it, and you want more. So he's in a very interesting position, and having that position, given because when you talk about Andor, there are no concerns. When you talk about Andor, you don't talk about the stuff, especially when we talk about it and when I talk about it with other people who have seen it. You talk about the stuff that they were able to pull off visually, the story that they were able to tell. You talk about classic, a moment of pure entertainment and enjoyment and drama. And you talk about Bret the Hitman Hart, the excellence of execution.
No, that's it. You want the impossible. The combination of Andor into Rogue One enhances the original trilogy. Do you know how impossible it is to enhance that?
And there's a love-hate relationship with prequels. This is a prequel that was done excellently. This is a bar, Brian, in terms of prequels. Because usually when you hear prequels for me, I'm like,
Well, hang on. Let's live in this universe. Let's be honest about how people felt about George Lucas's own prequels. Right? When those started to come out and people were like, these are not it. It started to take away from what he had done. So I'm just going to hit pause. I'm going to go in the time machine. What if instead of making Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, George Lucas's prequels had been Andor and Rogue One? Now what would you be saying about George Lucas? Exactly. And that's what I mean. Tony Gilroy found a way in to enhance arguably the greatest cinematic trilogy of all time with a prequel. And the guy that's now going to be running Lucasfilm reportedly did not like it.
You see, this is like, if I had Dave Filoni on the show, I would only have one question. Give me your reasons as to why Andor didn't work for you and for the Star Wars universe. Please, you have the floor.
Here's if you want to take the glass half full version of this. I believe, and we're dealing with this with James Gunn on the DC side, right? Where we're going to find out this year in terms of Clayface and Supergirl and Lanterns, we're going to find out a little bit about the answer to this question for him. We've heard things that are not great so far, but we'll see. I think when you sit in the chair of a Kathleen Kennedy, a Kevin Feige, a now Dave Filoni, I think one of your responsibilities is, can you detach your own preferences from what you know a broader audience could respond to? I think it's actually okay if Dave Filoni personally doesn't like Andor. I'm okay with it. That's a consumer's opinion, same as mine or yours, albeit a more powerful one. But does he have the vision to say, this is not the Star Wars for me, but I see how brilliantly written and made it is. I think it belongs in the catalog. Do you see the difference? It's like, if you only make the things that you like, I can kind of tell you where that's going to lead because we've seen it happen over and over again. You are catering to the wide audience, right? Dave Filoni's reputation and the people who support him and love him are people who grew up inside of Clone Wars, inside of Rebels, inside of this like deep dive Star Wars canonical research, right? Everyone talks about him as like the walking encyclopedia of Star Wars, and I don't doubt it. But around the world, the people who still have those feels and vibes for New Hope and Empire Strikes, a lot of those people are not the people doing that deep dive.
Yeah.
And now Dave Filoni has just as much responsibility to entertain them as he does the people that he's made happy with his animated shows and some of his Mandalorian writing through the years. And that's the challenge. Can you perceive that when Tony Gilroy pitches you Andor to say, you know what, that's not the Star Wars that I would make, but man, that could be really good Star Wars, and we should make it.
If he told me, yo, what project are you looking forward to doing or whatever? If he told me, yo, I'm trying to do the recruitment of Mace Windu. That's interesting to me. But you can't make it look goofy, yo. You can't make it look. You got to make that joint look dope. You got to help us escape into this world. Don't give us these sets that look weird, yo. Because if you look at Andor, yo, that is if you didn't like the story, fine, whatever. You didn't like the story, but visually, you can't tell me you didn't escape into that to that universe.
Right. So that's where it becomes down to, if you don't like it personally, do you have enough vision to say this will take us in directions that Star Wars needs to go? Those are two different questions. Like, we don't know if he's got the ability to separate that. Or, one of the gripes, we don't know for sure, but one of the gripes that we've heard coming out of the James Gunn DCU is that everything's got to be James Gunn style. Yeah. And if it's not, he's killing it. If that's true, his DCU will not become what we want it to be.
Yeah.
If it's not true, and Lanterns takes us in new directions and Clayface takes us in new directions, then sky's the limit. That's the challenge. But, the pros of Dave Filoni are obvious, right? He does know the Star Wars universe inside and out. Whatever else you want to say, he's lived in it for so long. That's the pros. So nothing's going to get past him in terms of like canon or this makes sense or these peripheral characters belong over here. He gets all that. The questions are obvious. To me, Star Wars is big IP. It is grand IP. It is sweeping IP, intergalactic IP by definition. I have not seen anything from Dave Filoni that I would classify as that. We're going to test it with Mando Grogu, but the trailers so far do not indicate it is that. If we have a head of Star Wars creatively who cannot make Star Wars big, that is not going to work. I'm sorry. I can't with Star Wars. I can't live on a couple of TV series alone. The magic of it is if they're all Andor, that's fine. But you know what? If they're all Andor, some of that stuff's going to the big screen, right? Rogue One was a movie, so we need cinematic events at the movies from Star Wars.
I'd bet you if you did like an Andor rewatch at a theater, you'd make some money.
I've said you should do the Andor, Rogue One, New Hope. Do it as a set. Like, do that as a set because it changes how you view New Hope in a really meaningful way. How does Rebellion begin? So that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Can he make a movie that takes you places, that makes you want to go to the biggest screen possible and immerse yourself in Star Wars? Because that's what Star Wars was. You talk about the essence of George. That's one of the essences of George, is that in 1977, people lined up around the block to go to the theater to see something on the big screen they hadn't seen before.
Interesting future ahead of us for Star Wars. And
You're right about Dawn of the Jedi, though. You are correct, I think. Because to me, that pitch is pretty easy. As we've talked about, I want to make the 10 Commandments of Star Wars. I want to make the biblical epic. Because everyone who's lived Hollywood knows that era, basically, including Bob Iger.
Yeah, you tied to it if they do something like that.
If they're so lukewarm on that, and she's telling you the script, which is the guy who wrote House of Cards and who wrote some of Andor, and she's telling you it's there, and they won't do it. I think you're right. I think it's because they're afraid that will break the mold in a way that will then kind of redirect everything else that they have to do.
And that's what it needs.
But that's the thing.
Star Wars isn't, I think, now or has become the vision of one. It is a consortium of individuals that have to craft the future of Star Wars, not just one. This is not Highlander week. No, there has to be the same way. The same way Kevin had his Parliament is the same way Star Wars has to have their group of individuals sort of creating the direction, because too many mind, like freaking Last Samurai. too many.
Look at the bull. That's hilarious.
Too many. You know what I'm saying?
This was a good conversation.
So,
no, but isn't, like, in a weird way, like what they did with Star Wars Visions is kind of on a very small scale, sort of what you want, right? It's like not all those episodes are good, right?
Yeah.
But
those standouts, whoo.
But the idea of it's a mix of almost this, it's a mix of fandom, right? It's a mix of fandom's vision of what Star Wars means to them. You know, if you have some gatekeeping around that, yeah, that's kind of what you want. I mean, like Andor is weirdly Elseworlds. It's not Elseworlds, right? It is Elseworlds in terms of how it's made, how it's written, how it's acted, but it's directly smack dab in the middle of this single continuity, right? So it will bother me if we wind up just, I'll give you my worst case scenario is that they simply do like live action remakes of Clone Wars and Rebels. I will be so bored.
If we get into that,
but that's what Disney's doing, right? Live action of animation that has worked. And if that's what he does, I'm going to be like, oh, really?
We're going to be doing the walks, yo. We're going to be doing the walks, yo. Star Wars, to me, is not supposed to be a story told that has its happy ending. Everybody thought of Return of the Jedi was its happy ending. The struggle continues. If you know what I'm saying, if you read books and the stuff that happened afterwards and stuff like that, you could have possibly continued down that path. But no, but you gave us the end you gave us the end instead of the stories in the middle of it, which you can still probably do. Sebastian Stan is right there.
I also think Andor touched on something that I think, look, you could talk about sandboxes you could live in for a long time. As you said, the idea of like that struggle, rebellion, empire, that is something that spanned the galaxy. What you saw on screen was a cross-section of that, localized to one boy's journey, one family's journey, right? Father and son. But I think what Andor shows you in snippets is this idea of it's happening in different worlds, and how it looks is very different, right? How Saw Gerrera lives and breathes the start of rebellion is very different than how Mon Mothma does it because of the worlds they inhabit. Honestly, you could do that for a long time. You could invent new corners of the galaxy, new worlds we haven't been to, and simply say, like, this is taking place during Empire Strikes Back. But it doesn't really matter what's going on in the asteroid field or in Cloud City because these people are living the struggle in this way on this world. Why couldn't you do that? I mean, you can do that.
Yeah.
And you could have the Force involved, and you could do all that sort of stuff if you wanted.
Yeah.
But that requires a broadening of the vision.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm with you. I'm sideways as well. And I will say, like I said, it's like, I do think it was time for a change. So I'm not like sad that Kathleen Kennedy's stepping aside, but there is a little whiff of like, be careful what you wish for with this IP.
Yeah.
Because the grass may not be that much greener, at least right away.
And we'll end with this. I still watch the original trilogy when I don't like think about it like, let me watch Star Wars. No. I have a moment to relax. I'm flipping through the channels and Star Wars is there. I'm watching it.
Yeah.
Especially Empire Strikes Back. Those moments of awe. The stuff that Yoda says to him. the stuff that Luke is, he can't believe it. And what did Yoda tell him? That is why you fail. Those are classic stuff.
Yeah.
And there's no denying that those moments can continue it, but it's up to the creative. Not to be scared to live up to that moment, but to create something new that gives you that same feeling. We always chasing that moment, that feeling.
Yeah. Well, that's the irony, right?
Yeah.
That's the irony. Like, Star Wars exists because Lucas wouldn't compromise on the vision, no matter how many studios turned him down. And finally, 20th Century Fox took a swing.
Take note of that, because that's going to come up in another conversation as to the relationship between creators and execs or something like that. That's an important conversation to keep in mind that we'll have later on in a different show.
Yeah, but my point is, it is the definition of not playing it safe. I mean, if you think about where sci-fi was in the mid-1970s, right, coming off of 2001 and movies like that, Lucas wouldn't stay in that lane. And he kept getting turned down. He's like, no, but I know I have something. And when they finally gave him a shot, as you said, he executed. And it's like, that combination is weirdly what they don't seem to want to do now. Is like, they don't want the swing from like a guy or a woman who clearly has an idea, has something. And they're like, we need to find out what that something is. And to us, Dawn of the Jedi feels like it could be one of those somethings.
Yeah.
Andor was one of those somethings. But I don't know. Feels like for right now, the studio remains safe and in retreat. And that's, at least if you believe Kathleen Kennedy, are one of the real sticking points internally about getting Star Wars stuff made.
Yeah, man. Let us know in the comment section below what you guys think. Brian gave me some good ideas to insert some callbacks to some films with that good conversation quote from The Last Samurai. But yeah, let us know in the comment section below, man. Things will change, obviously. A new person is in the seat, the hot seat. They're on the throne of knives. Right? Now let's see if they can if they can deal with the cuts of sitting on that position. Because you will get people's thoughts and opinions on a grand scale. And it's just a tough position to be in. But I think if you think about how to do this in a manner that will satisfy I think the approach is, and not to go on too further, the approach is you gotta satisfy the fandom, because there are millions of them. That's your crowd. Those are the people that you're gonna get, that you have to get, and you gotta satisfy, because these other people, if these people don't like it, then everybody else is gonna like it, because they you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, what's the point if they don't like it? And that's perhaps Andor hasn't gotten his just due.
You're right. No, that's the challenge. I mean, it's the same, it's the same on the comic book side, right? I mean, that's the challenge of like, there's the hardcore, and like, but I will say, look, at the end of the day, money talks, and there's a lot more casual to non-fans than there are diehards. That's just the reality of any community. So if you are choosing one or the other, I do think you choose the broader audience, and you hope that over time, the diehards maybe come around a little bit.
So yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of the changes that are upon us. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, share with your friends, hit that notification bell, and we thank you for continuing to listen to the conversations that Brian and I have about the stuff that we like to watch. I'm pretty sure you guys like to watch as well and have an opinion on. So thank you for the comments. And remember, if you haven't heard it anywhere else, you heard it here first on the Energy Report, and we'll see you next time.